Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed Ukrainian authorities are reviewing the 28-point plan prepared by the US and Russia.
At least 5 people have been killed and 10 others injured in a Russian strike on Ukraine's southeastern city of Zaporizhia.
Business activity in the Eurozone held firm in November as new data reflected a sharp rise in the latest reading, setting a new high since May 2024.
A fire broke out at the United Nations Climate Summit in Brazil, prompting evacuations and disrupting climate talks.
Here with me is a 28-point plan, which was allegedly prepared by the United States and Russia and passed on to Kyiv. Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that he received the plan and that Ukrainian authorities are reviewing it. Now let's review it together. The plan starts with Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed. By whom? Ukraine's sovereignty is already confirmed by Ukraine and its Western partners and indeed international community. It is expected that Russia will not invade neighboring countries and NATO will not expand further. Now, here are Moscow's demands to NATO, not only to Ukraine, which will continue in this plan, including if NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine. It then goes into Ukraine will receive reliable security guarantees. Now, mind you, Ukraine already received security guarantees as per the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, which guaranteed its sovereignty and territorial integrity in return for Ukraine giving up the third world's largest nuclear arsenal. The size of the Ukrainian armed forces will be limited. This is something that Russia has been insisting upon since the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, wording it as demilitarization of Ukraine. Following in the same category is demand about European fighter jets not to be stationed in Ukraine and instead to be stationed in Poland. Russia will be reintegrated into the global economy. The lifting of the sanctions will be discussed and agreed upon. This is, of course, Russia's biggest demand, specifically given the latest tough sanctions by the United States and Trump administration on Lukoil and Rosneft. There is an interesting part regarding the frozen asset. So, according to this leaked plan, $100 billion in frozen assets, frozen Russian assets, will be invested in US-led efforts. And the US will receive 50% of the profit from this venture. Now, this is something that the European Union clearly will have a lot to say about. Russia also promises to enshrine in law its policy of non-aggression towards Europe and Ukraine. Not only Ukraine now, but also Europe and the European countries. Let's go to the territorial concessions here. Crimea, Luhansk and Donetsk will be recognized as de facto Russian, including by the United States. How can the United States now recognize them de facto and not de jure? Now, this is a big question, but clearly something that Moscow has been pushing upon. Kherson and Zaporizhia regions will be frozen along the line of contact. Russia does not control any region of Ukraine in its entirety. Now, the biggest presence and the biggest occupation in terms of the percentage of the territory that Russia has currently in Ukraine is Luhansk region. When it comes to Luhansk and Donetsk regions, known together as Donbas, this is not the area that Russia has been trying to occupy since the beginning of the full-scale invasion in 2022. This is something that Moscow troops have been trying to occupy since 2014, for over 10 years now. One of the most important points in this alleged plan that was leaked on Thursday, all parties involved in this conflict will receive full amnesty for their actions during the war and agree not to make any claims or consider any complaints in the future. In which case, Russian forces and Russian authorities are trying to completely justify everything that their troops done in Ukraine, starting from the very first atrocities discovered when it came to the occupation of the Kyiv region, which lasted for a month, and the atrocities and revelations which the world saw when it comes to the liberation of Bucha, Irpin, and the rest of the Kyiv region, when it comes to the liberation of the Kharkiv region and the torture of the civilians and the sexual violence by Russian forces. Now, Ukrainian authorities did not say whether they are going to reject it or whether they're going to accept it. They do say that they're going to review that and they're going to engage in the dialogue. But clearly, some of these points are a no-go for Kyiv.
At least 5 people were killed in a Russian drone strike on Zaporizhia late Thursday, Ukrainian authorities said. The regional military administration in Zaporizhia said 3 people were injured in the overnight strikes, while in Odessa, 5 people, including 1 child, were injured in drone strikes. The strikes come just hours after the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was presented with a copy of a US-drafted 28-point plan which demands serious territorial concessions from Ukraine. The State Emergency Service said the strikes, which hit residential buildings, a vehicle service station, an administrative building, and market stalls, sparked fires. Firefighters worked through the night to extinguish the blazes. Meanwhile, Ukraine's State Emergency Service said the death toll from Wednesday morning's missile and drone strikes in Ternopil has risen to 28. With recovery operations ongoing, 16 people are still unaccounted for.
Women in Ukraine are not drafted into military service, but they can volunteer to join, and tens of thousands have done so since Russia first invaded Ukraine in 2014. Euronews spoke to 3 Ukrainian servicewomen who decided not just to stay, but also to defend their country.
Більше вже 70 тисяч жінок, і це рівнозначно деяким арміям європейських країн, наприклад, загалом. Да?
Жінок стає більше, їх буде ставати більше, немає іншого просто вибору. І за рахунок жінок в армії, тобто чим більше жінок в армії, тим комфортніше і краще себе буде почувати кожна ця жінка.
Alexandra Lysitska, a lieutenant, serves as an officer of the Special Purpose Group in the National Guard of Ukraine. She joined the army following the all-out invasion. When asked why she decided not just to stay, but also to join the defense, she said,
Я хочу жити в своїй країні, в своєму місті, в своїй квартирі, дивитися на будиночки не розбиті, а для цього потрібно щось робити.
Visiting the European Parliament in Brussels, they say the Europeans do not realize yet they might also face this choice.
Зараз у Європи є можливість підготуватися, підготувати сили, засоби, навчатися і разом з Україною боротися з цим злом. Тому що краще ж купувати хворі на етапі, поки вона не розповзлася повністю, широко, а коли воно ось є локалізоване в Україні і ще не дійшло до вас, але ти розумієш, що ось і почнеться умовне зараження крові. Потрібно ж з цим боротися, і це логічно, це про інстинкти самозбереження. А чому у Європи цього недостатньо, ну, не знаю. Але ми дякуємо за підтримку.
Business activity in the Eurozone held firm in November, building on the solid pace of growth recorded last month. October's figures reflected the largest expansion in Eurozone activity in over 2 years, largely thanks to continued resilience in the services sector. The Flash Purchasing Managers Index, known as PMI, released on Thursday by ratings and intelligence agency S&P Global, fell marginally from 52.5 recorded in October to 52.4 this month, in line with expectations. The services sector remained the key driver of growth, with activity rising to 53.1, its highest level since May 2024, defying forecasts of a modest slowdown. Manufacturing, by contrast, lost momentum, with the PMI slipping to 49.7, its weakest reading in 5 months. This could be attributed to the sharp rise in input costs for businesses, possibly driven by higher tariffs and the rising electricity costs, according to data collected in a recent survey. Despite the steady growth, however, the pace of new orders at European businesses slightly softened in the month of November, as weakness in external demand persists.
A pilot of an Indian fighter jet taking part in the Dubai Air Show has been killed after the plane crashed in front of a crowd on Friday, according to the Indian Air Force. The airplane appeared to have lost control and dived directly into the ground. As police vehicles, ambulances and a helicopter rushed to the site of the crash, Emirati officials have yet to provide further details. Friday marked the final day of the week-long air show, which many families had come to attend.
The Bulgarian General Directorate for Combating Organized Crime and Sofia City Prosecutor's Office announced that 35 Bulgarians were arrested for antique trafficking in an international operation involving Europol. Many treasure hunters, dealers, and high-level traffickers were detained both in Bulgaria and elsewhere in a coordinated operation spanning 8 countries.
Bulgaria requested Europol support almost 2 years ago. Because of the complexity of the case and the intensive investigation measures needed, we have proposed to set up a kind of an operational task force with Bulgaria, Europol, but also European and non-European countries.
30 час се провежда полицейската операция, още не е приключила. На терен имаме над 220 служители на ГДБОП, които извършват множество процесуални следствени действия, предимно претърсване и изземване, както и от прокуратурата казаха, това са на жилища, офиси, различни имоти, моторни превозни средства.
The criminal network has operated for 16 years across Western Europe, the United States, and the Balkans. They have many subcontractors in other countries ranging in specialties and professions. In Greece, archaeologists and professors were arrested after evidence suggested they were involved in the scheme.
Общата стойност е над 100 милиона евро на откритите вещи на черен пазар. Това не е цена, която е определена на нормалния пазар на артефакти. Още повече говорим за артефакти, които са придобивани незаконно. Някои от тях, голямата им част, от нелегални разкопки в района на Балканските държави, така също и в Италия.
In addition to international trafficking of historical valuables, members of the group are also being investigated for money laundering and other financial offenses.